fabric fur introduction. On the vast majority of my wearable art jackets, I have this furry little trim. It's great on clothing, and it's also great in home dec. Do you see this swirl embellishment on this pillow? It's simply layers of bias cut fabric, and I've got a great way of folding fabric to cut bias. So let me show you all my tricks. April Dunn, bless her heart, she was an ELNA educator way back when I opened my store, and she showed me this trick, and I have taught it so many times since then. I want to teach it yet again. You'll find it in all of my books and patterns, but here's how you do it. On any square of fabric, rectangle, single layer, this is a way that you can cut as long of bias strips as possible out of this piece of fabric. So you fold it in this manner. You take the northwest corner and you fold it down to the southeast at a 45-degree angle. All right? Now, the next step is that you take this southwest corner and fold it up to this corner that you just established. Do you see? It doesn't come all the way over here. You are folding it in a manner so that you keep these bias edges aligned. All right? I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take the northwest corner and fold it down so that the bottom edges are matching. So this is now that 45-degree angle. All right? If this were straight on the grid, you can see that this is the 45-degree angle. But let me reorient it so that you can see it square on. Now I'm going to take this southwest corner, and keeping these folded edges aligned, I'm going to bring it right up here. So these folded edges are matching. The next step is to do the same thing again. I'm going to take this corner, keep these folded edges aligned. All right? So one more time. You might even want to replay this video and get a piece of notebook paper and do the same thing. So it's the northwest corner down to the southeast at a 45-degree angle. Then that southwest corner up here, keeping these folded edges aligned. And then this next step is the same operation, but this is where people get messed up. You do the same thing again. If I had started out with a 60-inch wide piece of fabric or 45 inches wide, I would just keep doing that until I came up with a width that I could manage to cut. So here I'm just going to fold this edge down. Then I'm going to take a rotary cutter and I'm going to simply cut off these folds. I usually consider that just to be waste. And then I'm going to start cutting strips that are 3/4 of an inch wide. So when you're using a rotary cutter, you want to have the bulk of your fabric to the right. And I'm sorry, I just can't do that upside down. So here I'm going to cut. I cut my strips for fabric for 3/4 of an inch wide. I generally don't cut the whole piece. I cut just what I think I might need. And then I leave my piece cut because in the construction of one of my wearable art jackets, I may yet want to cut bias wide enough for one of those decorative folded edges, decorative wrapped edges. That's a whole other video. So I will just keep this that way. So now I have what are the longest pieces of bias. This is not where you take that trapezoid parallelogram thing and stitch it together cattywampus and then mark lines and cut so you have it all sewn together. No, this is simply cutting bias strips as long as they can be by cutting across a shorter length. And that technique is really, really a great one. So you're going to end up with some different lengths, and that's fine. The next step is to go to the sewing machine and stack them up and stitch them together. Let's do that next. Now as you start to stack these strips, you can mix your colors. Do you see in this sample that I have 3 layers, but the middle layer, actually there's 4 layers, but the middle layer is a hot pink, the top is a purple. So you're going to get a different mix of feather fur depending upon how you stack your layers. If you're going to couch yarn down the middle, you want to make sure that your yarn contrasts with the top layer. But for right now, we're just going to do this silk du peony, which is one of my favorite fabrics. Now, you don't have to make this into rocket science. I don't have to worry about stacking them up neatly. I'm just stitching down the middle, and doing so with a contrasting colored thread is really a good idea. You're going to couch some yarn down the middle anyway. All right, so do you see here I've got a short strip in the middle. I may have ended up with a short strip on top. It really doesn't matter. Wherever you run out, you're just going to take another piece, you're going to layer it in, and you're just going to keep stitching. So wherever you run out, you're just going to add another one. You would want to cut off any selvages. See right here it got real narrow for some reason. Precision is not the name of the game at this point. I like to use 3 strips. I've done as many as 5. I've even done it out of denim, but a heavier weight fabric like denim, it's really hard to get it to fur a whole lot. You can do this out of any yarn dyed fabric. Even cheap lining fabric works really well. See, this fabric here has 2 different colors in it, black and this olivey green, so that makes a really interesting furry snake. All right, this was home deck fabric. What will not work is cotton quilting fabric that's been printed. If it's colored on the front and a white on the back, it is not going to make pretty fabric fur. Also very closely woven fabric like batiks, those do not ravel enough, not ravel, but they just don't fur enough on the bias to make nice fur. You'll learn what works, but again, this technique is in all of my patterns in books and in my embellishment DVD, in my Creative Jacket Journey DVD, so you'll see exactly how I make use of it in many of my products. Now that I have stitched down the middle, kind of, I'm going to neaten it up. So now I'm going to take my rotary cutter, and this is where I'm going to line up that contrasting color of stitching. Now do you see I can neaten up both sides? So we'll just do a little bit of it. So I neatened up that side. Now I'm going to turn it around and neaten up the remaining side. So I'm just aiming my stitching line on my 1/4 inch on my ruler and neatening up. This is just garbage. Although actually I have saved these. A lot of times I've got a whole bag of these scraps. There might be something I can do with them. It is silk after all. All right, so now you've got this and it looks like really nice and neat compared to what we had before. Then nothing replaces this. This is the fabric chenille brush. I carry these at my website. This is from the Fabric Cafe. Bless their little hearts. I love this tool. These are wire, and what you do on a surface that you're not really going to scratch up. You wouldn't want to do this on a pretty table. You wouldn't want to do it on your sewing machine bed. You're just going to start really taking out any aggression, any frustration you might have on this bias cut stacked strip of bias. I did this in a pillow class with my young girls, and they just thought this was the cat's pajamas. You can turn it over and do it from the other side. You want to go both directions, and it does take a little while, but I think it's just a wonderful trim. See where I've got my finger here? I'm really doing this. This was actually the first technique that I was invited to teach for It's So Easy, that PBS teaching series, and would you believe that I got there to tape and I didn't bring my brush? The guys looked in the workshop and found a metal brush, and I had my hand over the whole thing. One of those experiences you'll never forget. All right, so now I have my fabric fur. So then I can just lay it down, and because it's bias, you see it can curl around like I did on this pillow. So I'll stitch it down. I would likely stitch it down with monofilament thread, clear thread. If I did not want to put any couched yarn in the middle of it, which I didn't do on this, but on my jackets, I did couch some yarn down the center of the fabric fur. So that's what I call fabric fur. Pretty simple, quick and easy. Just remember, it will not work on cotton printed quilting fabric, but rather yarn dyed fabric. And when the warp and the weft, the lengthwise and crosswise grains, are 2 different colors, it makes really pretty snaky fur. Fabric fur.